Who you are. And lastly, I just want to say this. Making the Revenant was about man's relationship to the natural world, a world that we collectively felt in 2015 as the hottest year in recorded history. Our production needed to move to the southern tip of this planet just to be able to find snow. Climate change is real. It is happening right now. It is the most urgent threat facing our entire species. And we need to work collectively together and stop procrastinating. We need to support leaders around the world who do not speak for the big polluters or the big corporations, but who speak for all of humanity, for the indigenous people of the world, for the billions and billions of underprivileged people who will be most affected by this, for our children's children, and for those people out there whose voices have been drowned out by the politics of greed. I thank you all for this amazing award tonight. Let us not take this planet for granted. I do not take tonight for granted. Thank you so very much.
25 years we've been studying the impacts of climate change on Glacier National Park, and one of the most obvious responses is that the glaciers are getting smaller. They're melting in response to the increased temperatures. There were at least 150 glaciers here about the time that the park was founded, and now there's 25 left that we think are large enough to be truly glaciers, which is ice that moves under its own weight. And many of those remaining glaciers are getting smaller pretty quickly. For instance, this year we had a dramatic event at Grinnell Glacier where in one moment a huge chunk of the glacier calved off. So that glacier lost 10% of itself in just one event. Certainly glaciers can't keep doing that and be around for very much longer.
My name is Joe McKay. Inisquanatabs, or Power Buffalo in the language of my people. I have a dance troupe, and we actually perform at the Glacier National Park Visitor Center. And one of the things I do is visit with the folks at the park about glaciers. We all know, whether you look at it culturally or scientifically, water is the lifeblood of the universe. In our world, glaciers then are not just drying up or disappearing. Glaciers are dying.
In Glacier County, there's a lot of agricultural products that get shipped out all over, whether it's barley or wheat or the beef that is raised here. People are having to change their planting seasons. They're having to be very mindful of their water holes. Some of those are not being replenished.
My name is Standing Grizzly Bear, but my English name is Mike Dergalo. I'm the Environmental Director for the Confederate Salish and Kootenai Tribes, and I'm also the Climate Change Planning Coordinator. The northwest side of the reservation, the water table has dropped about 15 feet in the last 15 to 20 years. This is about the lowest I've ever seen it in my lifetime. So that's one of the effects of not having the amount of snow and snowpack in the mountains. That means less water availability for the farmers and ranchers that are irrigating down in the valley. When we started developing the climate change strategic plan for the tribes, we felt that it was very important to include traditional knowledge. And part of that knowledge is the values and the respect that the people have for the land and for this area, for the animals, for the air, for all the things that are here. And those values will live on.
I think every religion has some belief of a higher power. For Indian people, interacting with that higher power many times has to do with being in nature. And we're causing global warming because we put economics and material wealth ahead of quality of life and sustainability of the earth. And to me, it's kind of as simple as that.
If it floods over and over again,
we clean it out. Yeah.
We are the face of climate change. We bring reality to climate change by us having to make decisions between do we stay, do we go, Do we risk our health? Do we risk losing this peace that we have here?
To me, it's just another symptom of the human footprint on the earth. There are so many things that we do. We overpollute, we burn too much fossil fuel, and all of this is coming back to try to help us learn that we shouldn't have done some of these things in the past.
All my life, and I was till I die.
But something in me will stay behind because this is where it started. This is where I was raised. This is where home was. This is where I belong.
There are things happening on the land that are very disturbing.
Some of our lakes have become unswimmable. Some of our well water has become undrinkable.
Elders can't predict a lot of the weather patterns or what is known in our traditional ecological knowledge.
It's affecting the maple. It affects the trees. Some of the birds are not even flying south anymore.
The medicines that we used to be able to find, we can't find them anymore.
We know that the animals are going to suffer. And if the animals suffer and the land suffers, we're going to suffer.
Communities are slipping into the ocean in the Arctic, or their houses are literally sinking into the permafrost. And it feels like the only people that are being like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? Have been Indigenous communities calling for an end to these things. Transition needs to happen now. We need to stop doing what we've been doing and begin something new. That's where this idea of Indigenous climate action has really come from. This idea that Indigenous peoples aren't just the first to be impacted, but can be the first people to provide solutions that are grounded in more than just economic solutions.
Canada and its whole system, its whole economic paradigm is fundamentally out of sync with what real tangible action on climate looks like.
What I see from grassroots movements like ICA, I'll Know More, they're putting together plans that are ambitious and something that actually reflects the type of knowledges that we're talking about all the time when we talk about Indigenous knowledge.
We are our own experts. We don't have to translate ourselves all the time through the lens of the mainstream.
We want to work towards a recognition of our fundamental role as the leaders in this discussion.
Because we can't just be addressing climate from a science perspective. We have to be addressing it from a human rights perspective and an Indigenous rights perspective. Indigenous climate actions and other Indigenous-led initiatives and mobilizations are going to be critical to making that happen in the most effective way.
So the story in the Southwest is the story of water. Even without climate change, we already have multiple challenges with water. We have episodic droughts, we have a growing population, many demands on the water supply. And what we find, one of the major impacts of climate change on water supply is through snowpack. We're noticing earlier snowmelt, earlier timing of runoff into streams.
The precipitation is being released more in the form of rain, more and more instead of snow. And that's an issue because the snowpack is one of our main natural water reservoirs.
So climate change is kind of upping the ante in terms of water management. Some people may find it ironic, given that water is the big issue in the West, that temperature is driving so much of the change. California provides a tremendous amount of fruit for the United States, and those trees need chilling hours. They need cold temperatures in order to eventually produce blossoms and fruit.
The increase in temperatures will tend to reduce the yields and the quality of the agricultural products.
One of the big implications for the Southwest, if we stay on the path of having high rates of heat-trapping gas emissions in the atmosphere, is that it changes the paths of storms through altering the jet stream, and we have an aridification of an already arid area. And that, of course, has implications across the board, from our water supplies to our urban areas to our interior forests, and increasing the risks of fire with a longer snow-free season. But perhaps equally, or maybe even more important for urban areas, is extreme temperature. And as we have increased temperature, we're amplifying the risk to public health.